Hello, I am Christa Butalese with Odyssey magazine. And today I invite you to join us on a conversation with a woman I find always illuminating, Colleen-Joy of Inner Life Skills. um, Thank you for joining us, Colleen. I really appreciate it.
It's more than a pleasure, Krista. Thank you.
We've already started chatting, as often happens on these things, but both our minds are on the theme of our March, our first print issue as a team, which is themed metamorphosis, which is already bringing up all kinds of interesting things in my life and my team's lives. And it's an area that I know you know a lot about. So I know you're going to be bringing some really wonderful content for that. Um, let's just start there. I mean, what does metamorphosis bring up for you?
I think it holds an interesting paradox. And I think for a lot of folks on this path, they bump into that paradox at some point. There's this deeper sense of being that isn't changing, that's this sanctuary, that this is the sense of unchanging presence. And then there is also absolutely something growing, something becoming. So you've got this being and you've got this becoming. And a lot of folks struggle to reconcile the two. Both seem valid, both are true. So I'm looking forward to our conversation because I think that it might really serve the folks out there who are bumping into what do I do with these two? I know I'm growing. I know there's a metamorphosis happening. I know there's change. I know there's a letting go. I know the me that I experience is different to the me from 15 years ago. I know all the hard work, the spiritual growth work, the personal growth work has produced a change. And yet there is also these glimpses of this underneath, this underlying, unchanging, rested awareness. And so I find that probably a useful conversation that might land and serve.
I always picture this because it's part of the work I do with people as well, and certainly a big part of my path in life is there are kind of two parts that could apply to this. One is the leap. So you've wanted this change, you've worked for it, you've taken courses, you've gone off to Bali, you've done whatever you needed to do, the silent retreats. And then, be careful what you wish for. Then here it is. And there's a story that I tell in my new book, and I think I've told it online before, about a little boy I saw on the beach with that big oversized T-shirt, and he had it flipped up. So he'd been walking and collecting stones and shells and beach glass and who knows what else was in there. It was all wet and sandy. It was the end of the day. He was tired. He was maybe three, maybe not, and no adults around. And he's wandering towards presumably the adults, and there is all of a sudden he stops and he looks down and there's this beautiful like whole conch shell which you rarely find in the area we were in anymore. When I was a kid they were prevalent, but not now. And he just stood there and he looked at it, and it was like, the holy grail of shells, but he didn't want to give up what was in his t-shirt, and there wasn't any space, and he couldn't bend over or everything would flip out. And I thought, what what a perfect picture, for that
Yeah,
sort
I
of
like that.
thing where
Yeah.
you're on the end of the cliff and you don't want to give up the grass under your feet, but to get where you really want to go, you got to go off the edge. So there's a little mixed metaphor. And the other thing that we talked about is, which I think comes maybe even before, and where I found myself this morning and thought this really never ends, no matter how many times you do this, is the muddy middle. The stage where, I'm
Mm.
writing a book, I've been writing it for over a year. It's it's pretty good, and if I say that, then it's probably quite good. Um, it's ready to go, and yet I just find myself like still working at it, still trying to make it better. We can get really stuck in that place of seeking or learning or getting
Mm.
degrees. I know people who get stuck in, academia. And I don't know about you, but most people I work with really don't need another degree or another telecourse or another,
Yeah.
you know, once they reach a certain point. But to take that step and go over the line, it's a big thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That.
how do you talk to people about it?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's try this metaphor on for size. It's landing quite well in my circles. So let's lean into the metaphor as if it's a way to understand that metamorphosis process, that muddy middle, and that what are we willing to sacrifice, the t-shirt with all the shells versus the big real thing, right?
Mhm.
So perhaps to think of winter, easy one, as when we're experiencing suffering, and fall, autumn, when we're seeking, and there's this natural, the winds are blowing away all the leaves and we're feeling a bit more naked, where
Mhm.
all our past beliefs and the way we've seen reality and ourselves has been shaken loose.
Mhm.
And
Doesn't
then
hurt
we've got our,
anymore. Yeah,
yeah, and then
yeah.
the spring of seeing, where there's a flowering, there's a natural opening, there's a natural breath of relief, just like spring tends to bring, where there's some joy and there's some freedom, but there's also the risk of identifying and creating another subtle identity in that space, and not realizing there's still summer, right? And the summer, of course, being serving, if I play with the alliteration, where that reed has become hollowed out so that love and life can sing through it.
Right.
And I think a lot of what I've seen for myself in my own journey, for sure, I've also been there, done that, got the t-shirts. Yeah, yeah. We've all done it and still taste it, because these seasons aren't once off. We could be in a bigger arc of spring. And
That's
I
the
think
point I really want to make. It's not a one and done
yeah,
kind
there's
of.
no one and done, and then we can still have a Monday winter, you know, or have a deep summer retreat, and then wonder why we've gotten back to an autumn of seeking on Tuesday, where we're
Mm,
doubting again and questioning again. So, I think there is an underlying general stabilizing of deeper seeing, deeper embodiment over time. But the becoming is cyclical, and it is, and I think maybe one of the first messages that I've found really useful when it's become clear for me is this is natural. You're not doing something wrong suddenly in a winter.
it
You're
doesn't
not,
mean
you
just because
haven't
it's the
lost
weather.
it.
You have a cold day or you get hail in the middle of summer. It happens.
Yeah,
It's unusual, but it
exactly.
happens. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the nature of it. And so the muddy middle, I think, is when the mind clings to the season as a state, or when we measure our worth or progress in the season that we're experiencing, which is very unfair to ourselves. But when we see it as natural, and when we see it as um, it is there is the paradox of the deeper true,
Hmm.
and there is the song that is rising in the space. And I know I'm bouncing also mixed metaphors here,
I
but
do this. So
yeah, there is this that is becoming, to deny it and to pretend it's summer when it's not,
yeah.
or to pretend that winter's not happening, or even worse, to blame ourselves for winter, or to pretend the questions of autumn on burning in our hearts. See, so honesty, self-honesty, really, really important.
Mm.
Honoring that
What is?
this human
What is?
expression, that
Yeah.
this soul
Yeah.
is on a journey of metamorphosis, and its journey is to ultimately reflect, to be able to embody a deeper, unchanged home of self, but that both can be true. Like the
That's, I think
wave
both can be
isn't
true.
enough to reflect the
Yeah.
ocean. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we go to, I'm thinking about, because I live in KZN, I'm thinking about when people come here from Gauteng or Free State for holiday, and particularly in the winter. And it's more temperate here for people who aren't from South Africa. It's like Florida, or Southern California. It's more temperate, but we do get cold streaks, just like those places get. And people will come with their beach clothes and things like that, and it's single digits centigrade. They just wear the shorts and the t-shirt while we're all in parkas, and scarves and gloves sometimes. So it has to do with what you're used to, and being in something new and different. But I think there's I mean, the classic example of metamorphosis obviously is the butterfly, or as we call them here, blutterflies, because my youngest granddaughter called them that for so long. And the butterfly, there's a couple points. Is it's such a graphic image. The caterpillar, I used to think, I think most people think, if we think about it, that the caterpillar goes in the chrysalis, in the cocoon, and somehow wings grow, and it comes out and it flies. Hmm. I think it actually turns into mush. It liquefies. Its cells completely change and morph. So that's I think very symbolic for you often, even as many times as I've been through this, I was a puddle this morning. It doesn't happen for so long anymore. I don't struggle with it. And I have plenty of people I can call if I do. But I have quite a list now. But you have to really let yourself sort of fall apart to some degree. And then, as with the butterfly, you can't force it. If you cut open that chrysalis to make it easier for the butterfly, the wings won't develop correctly and the butterfly will never fly. So all of that work that it's done, when I think a lot of us try, I'm thinking because I have a child in matric, and I know you've been through this stage, when we try and help people too much, particularly, this is a very transitional time in their lives. And it's going to cripple her if I do everything for her this year, despite the fact that there's a whole lot to do. And I must let her, and I must watch her struggle. And better she gets out of her chrysalis here, where I can, put a rock under her if she needs it, or a branch. So that's just something that's been on my mind a lot. I think, I
Yeah.
think we talked about this, that people expect life to be either a straight line or preferably like this. And
Yeah.
when I was in hospital, I spent hours looking at the graph of the heart monitor and how it goes up and down and how it would flatline a little here and there. Um, and I think that is really also symbolic for life. But we have this idea that maybe, like, if we're going to grow and we're going to change, nothing, we don't give up or lose or let go of anything that we have been. We just keep adding on. And yet somehow, certainly on an energetic level, that doesn't really work, though people try.
Yeah. I'm wondering, there's like two paths to go now in the conversation. The one is, are we helping or hurting? Which is quite an interesting one. I think people might be very interested in that. And the other is more of the, yeah, what are we willing to let go of? You know, and that's a curious one right there, because I think back to the nature metaphor,
Mhm.
you know, the autumn of having our leaves blown off is happening, and we may think we're holding on, but I suspect that in the bigger scheme of things, we're on that bus, and we're we can just really fight the natural process or recognize it and walk through the seasons with as much dignity and as much courage as we can,
And
uh,
allowing,
with
rather than too
knowledge
much
and
energy
with,
fighting it. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So so one of the things that's showing up for me very much in the helping or hurting, and because I work with healers and coaches and people who are really natural teachers and mentors, I think a lot of folks bump into the edge. Where am I helping? Where am I hurting? Where? And back to some alliteration. I have to say, Colleen, am addicted to alliteration. It's a but kind of an internal joke, right? But
Same.
am I carrying or caring? You know,
Yeah.
getting, yeah.
Yes.
So the and this is and this is quite a subtle one, but it's really alive at the moment for me, and it's something that I haven't seen at this depth before, and it's landing a lot with the people I serve. Folks that are drawn to helping in some way, and I know the readership of Odyssey, there's definitely lots and lots of those people. There's a tendency to be quite intuitive. There's a tendency to be quite empathic, and the gifts of the empath and having empathic intuitive skills are profound and beautiful. And I think and if we go back to the seasons, I think in our winters and in our autumns and even in our spring, they and early spring, they serve us so well, don't they? Because at the very least, you might have found this, but a lot of folks find the validation they're looking for through their intuition. They
Uh-huh.
tune into someone and it's accurate, right? They extended
Yeah.
healing. They provided a service. They felt moved to share in some way, and it landed for someone in a way that surprised them also.
Mhm.
So there is this, there is the actual gift of being able to tune in, being able to translate, being able to extend these bridges to each other. There's the gift of the validation that brings, wow, I am definitely more than this little separate someone, because what I was able to know goes beyond what's
The ordinary.
accepted as physically possible, you know? So all of that, that's been my path.
Hmm.
And then at some point, there's a I think as we get into our more and more spring and perhaps some of summer, I think the transition is the orientation starts to change from wave to ocean anyway, right? There's a dropping, there's a natural dissolving of a sense of a separate self. There's a
Hmm.
natural and often existential crisis in amongst that, and all of the things that go with that. But
Hmm.
the way we help also is asked to change. It's like the river was seeking the ocean. So it's not
Yes.
appropriate once you start resting as the ocean. There's a disorientation around dropping the seeking habit. And there's a rediscovery of now, how do I help? You know, how do I help if I'm not extending, if my heart isn't going to you to tune in. How else can I help? And the recent epiphany or really profound understanding, which I'm experimenting with as part of my ongoing becoming,
Mhm.
is if you are, and I'm going to switch to songs now as a metaphor. So yeah, hold on to your
Carefully,
horses.
you're switching to
Exits are
song.
there, and oxygen will be provided. So if we switch to imagine that everything is song, that this
Hmm.
table is song, my hand is a symphony of songs. Colleen is actually just a symphony of threads of song, and there's no, let's say even quantum physics, da, 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 there's no objects. Let's just imagine it's all this beautiful symphony of song, and some songs are discord, they're noisy, they're out of sync, they're in pain and suffering, winter. Some songs are seeking in their autumn, some songs are starting to harmonize, starting to reflect a deeper, slow carrier wave, which I'm going to call home song.
Hmm.
Okay. So now as the soul matures and as there's a ripening, what naturally happens is this, that underneath the fabric of everything, from my eyelashes to this table, everything has in its symphony, in its fabric of woven songs, it has home song. And this home song is the first song. It is the closest to the first out breath, the first singing of the self, right? The first. And this home song is in all, okay? It's in everything. So what happens is that as we deepen and as the leaves are shed and as the flowering opens and as this home song starts to sing more freely
Yeah.
through the life, through ourselves, through our very
Every-
presence, and it sets up resonance bridges. Now, the change of orientation here is while we still felt, believed, operated as if we were separate little entities, it was appropriate to send a bridge to an other, you know,
Mhm.
to tune
Mhm.
into an other, to
Specifically.
even, yeah, to even represent their song in us for validation, for understanding. But as the season deepens and this orientation changes, that can start to become a problem. Because when you are transmitting a lot of home song, when home song becomes the dominant symphony,
Hmm.
it will naturally, it sings without effort and it sings without control.
Direction.
It is natural, spontaneous, and it sets up resonance bridges with all the other home songs in the field.
Hmm.
So that's not giving, it's not transmitting, it's not
Yes.
sending, it is simply resonating everything awake, right?
Hmm.
So that now what happens is that when there's a lot of home song running through a nervous system, through in a being, in a soul, and if you are with someone who is just casually curious
Hmm.
or unwilling to be uncomfortable,
Yes.
okay?
Observing, but not really ready to go.
Yeah, because home song will shake those leaves.
Of course. Of
Any
course.
home song, by the very nature of it, the part of ourself, the part of our identity that are still holding on to separateness, are still they and unconsciously even
Yes.
home song
Very.
naturally shakes that. It naturally wakes more spring, right? And bring it wakes a summer. So what I've seen happen in myself and what I've seen happen for many of the people that I serve, the healers, the teachers, the coaches, is that we were so good at reading the field, so good at tuning in, so good at bringing stability, bringing harmony, that
Mm-hmm.
as the spring and summer start to deepen, now we are being asked to change our relationship with discomfort,
Yes.
because for home songs to do their job, there is a beautiful, breaking of the shell, like the liquefying of of the
It's a
butterfly, right?
it's a disequilibrium. It's
It
a
it accelerates that, yeah, it accelerates that natural process. So the change there is to for me, and it, it's a change of, in order to serve, and it's not to intentionally provoke, right? So we're not, this is not an
no, no,
artificial thing. It's not a
no,
trying to be different or
no,
quirky,
no.
or trying to shock. This is literally that our job is not to put the field back to sleep because it's comfortable.
Right. We're not
That
tucking away.
sometimes silence is uncomfortable, but sometimes silence is the natural pause that wants to rise to create a kind of natural tension where home song can resonate across that tuning fork. Sometimes speaking is the most natural. So we
Mhm.
watch and we observe our own willingness to be uncomfortable with our own seasons of becoming, and in the summer of serving, and the more we serve, is to recognize the value of making the field uncomfortable, not intentionally, but because,
But allowing it to be. Yeah.
yeah, the deeper song that is being called into the space that has uh, that capacity to wake with love, with peace, with
Hmm.
love that doesn't have an other, with peace that doesn't have an opposite, and with causeless joy. So it's a non-dual, unpolarized peace, love, and joy. So
I put
yeah,
it
so
there.
I think even our relationship with helping, with healing changes. And this year, my commitment to myself is to lovingly, compassionately observe my own process, with sometimes when I'm teaching, and I've been teaching since I was 17. So I notice my tendency to use humor or to fill a silent pause because I sense the discomfort in the
Right.
space. And what's happening now is this lovely, beautiful, loving, fierce love. A fierce love singing through coal that is discovering the importance of and the value of home song. Can make the room feel uncomfortable, but
Mhm.
that is the gap for
Mm.
spring. That is the gap for summer.
And to allow that to just be both, I'm thinking both of us are going to be speaking again at the Quizzaloo Spirit Fest, when you're giving a presentation, just allowing those extra beats to let people sort of find, you know, their response to that vibration. Um, and to walk out if necessary. That happens. And then it happens in other ways. I do a lot online. People ask me, how can you respond so compassionately to some comments that are, can be um, challenging. And some of them I leave alone, but the ones that I feel a response to, at this point in that arena, because in other arenas I'm not as comfortable. Depends where you are. In that arena, I can do that. I can respond in a way that answers that vibration they're sending to me. Not to shut it down, but I see you, and here's a little more. You'll take it or you won't. You know, with Odyssey, our whole because our readers are a really wide range of
Yeah.
individuals in every single possible way. And as we bridge more internationally, that will be even more true because, cultural differences and things like that. So, the metaphor for that has always been putting out a tray of bird food. We've talked about that, you don't sit there by the bird food and hand feed, although I know people who will because they're helping, hand feed the tiny millet to the birds with the tiny beaks and, say sunflower seeds to the ones with the gross beaks. And that takes a certain level of, now the word that keeps coming up is allowing. There's an interesting series of books. I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're called like Your 1-Year-Old, Your 2-Year-Old, Your 3-Year-Old. They were written by two women in the 1950s who were child psychologists or psychiatrists. And they're developmental books, tiny little books. And in the back, there's Q&A, which was always, it's very dated now, so it's funny. But there's always a graph, and it's a coil, almost like a DNA coil with a line dividing it exactly in half up and down. And it shows it with young children every 6 months. So 6 months is on this side, the next 6 months, that kind of thing. And one side is labeled disequilibrium, and another side is labeled equilibrium. Anyone who's raised children know that everything can be going very, very well. What a little microcosm of life this is. You can have them, they're napping on a normal schedule. You can plan your day. They're eating certain things. Everything's going well. And then one day you wake up and none of it works anymore. And that stage is gone. And that was their point is, that babies and young children go through these cycles. I think human beings go through those cycles. I think that's, you're using the seasons, but even, in my mid 60s, still happening. I'll let you know if it stops. Where we, and it can happen in different areas of life, but unless we decide, like that little boy on the beach, to just drop down and stay on the beach with that wet sandy t-shirt and keep those shells and not move forever, it's inevitable that things are going to shift. And yet I think we're conditioned, just a really simple example, it's less so for this generation, but when we were growing up, that, there's this belief, especially in the West, if you're friends with someone, say you meet, in grade 6, and you don't stay friends with them for the rest of your life, something's wrong. Someone was wrong. Someone offended someone. Someone didn't stay in touch. There's a negative connotation with that versus seeing it as these kind of cycles that you talk about. And, their home song is an entirely different vibration than yours, and that's fine. Things drift and sometimes they come back together.
So, just one little point. So there's the paradox right there. The what I'm pointing to as home song is not ever different. So
Riding.
what we could say is that there is and that's the paradox, right? That Christa has her own unique song as a soul,
Mm-hmm.
as a human, as a life, as a beautiful story. Colleen has her own unique song, but if we kind of pulled apart, if we took away all the modulations, all the symphony, and we stripped it back, we'd see that underneath all the unique expressions of your songs and all the unique expressions of my song, there's a home song that is always unchanged the same. And that is the ultimate paradox, is this. In the spring we start to perhaps get some glimpses of it in meditation, in nature. There's this dissolving of a sense of separate self. People experience this sometimes in rituals, in retreats. They have it sometimes just spontaneously. I had a student that once had this deep ego collapse while she was washing dishes. So I'm like, okay, that's new. Um, but this suddenly realizing, this that is seeing, this that is present. Oh my word, it's not what I thought it was. I
Yes.
am not what I thought I was. And this I that sees that it's not what the beliefs reflected, what the mirror of the mind was holding up for it. There's now this paradox. There's now this. So, what am I? Am I this unchanging home song expressing ground of being that is open, unchanged awareness? Or
Hmm.
am I the butterfly going through the metamorphosis? Am I this that is always changing, always growing? So ultimately, I think it's helpful to know the ground of being in which all songs arise is the ultimate. The song rises and falls, but this stable I am awareness, I am this ordinary presence of seeing, that never changes. But it's not Hollywood, it's not extraordinary, it doesn't go through peaks and troughs. It's and if we try to claim that, let's say, before we've seen it fully, because it sounded beautiful, and I've seen this in, it's the trying to be spiritual,
Yeah.
or trying to bypass, trying, like you were saying
I was
so
going to
beautifully
say
earlier,
this
it's
is
try.
really spiritual bypassing.
Yeah, exactly, we're on the same page. Yeah, the trying not to pretend winter is not happening, or to blame winter
Right.
on somebody's negative thoughts, or on,
Well,
you did that to yourself. I'm safe because I only have positive thoughts. And I'm pushing here, but these are the edges we live in. And
but it's true.
the,
You
yeah,
see this a lot. Well, clearly you weren't manifesting correctly.
yeah. I was, when I first bumped into a lot of that in a very first-hand way,
Mhm.
I became quite angry, and hurt and confused and
Frustrating.
around the topic for a long, long time, until I experienced an armed robbery, home invasion, and then a very spiritual friend said to me
Helping.
afterwards, very casual, so Cole, what negative thoughts did you have to attract a robbery? That's when I wanted to create, and this is a joke, right? But I sometimes want to make a T-shirt for us saying, "Don't open your mind so much that your heart falls out," right?
Right.
It's a
That's excellent.
yeah, the open-minded, but it left me, what this friend had said left me doubting, because now I was terrified. I mean, if there's even a 1% chance that what he's saying is true, that I did this to myself, I need to make sure I find those thoughts and do something about them, because I'm terrified for my children, I'm terrified for me.
And look,
And
that's a fear-based projection. And you're already in fear, understandably. Your whole nervous system's activated and all of those kinds of things. Yeah. I've had similar. I had a friend who was pregnant with twins, and one of the twins was either stillborn or died right after the birth, within minutes. And people have actually said to her, she's a runner, and she's been a runner for, she's in her early 30s. She's been running for 20 years at least. And they said, well, obviously, the running was just too taxing, while you were carrying this pregnancy. Number one, this is a conditioned body. Number two, it's a very intelligent woman, but she literally stopped running for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, one of
Someone's
the,
vulnerable. That's an easy
yeah,
injury. Like,
and I understand. So this is me, the part of me that learned, there's two things that I can share from this. And the first is I came to realize that we all do this. We all make it them
you do.
so that it's not us, right? It only happens to them. It only
Well,
happens to
it's
people with
self-comforting.
bad karma. It only happens to people, like if you were like fundamentalist or more religious, it happens, I'm a good Christian. God's not going to punish me. I'm a good Hindu. I've given back, my guru's taken my karma or whatever. So it's if with compassion we understand we are trying to protect ourselves from being on that boat where it can happen to us.
When we're
And
scared, we
so we
cover.
make it them. It only happens to them, not to enlightened people, not to people who practice positive thinking or whatever. So that's another discomfort, it's another uncomfortable thing to look at. But the second thing, which really, perhaps someone's listening right now that really needs to hear this, and that when I sat there thinking of tuning in, asking for wisdom, sending a bucket in,
Mhm.
and really waiting, and I was willing. I was like, if it is really true that my thoughts did attract this, I'm willing to see. I'm willing, I just want clarity here. And the words that landed, that literally like opened my mind and heart and had me weeping, is winter is not your fault. You can think summer. Winter is not your fault. And we can take responsibility for our bad behavior, for throwing emotions around the room. We can do so. We're not excusing consequences that are ours.
Being
But
unprepared for something. Yeah.
whatever it is, yeah, exactly. This is just to see the deeper truth. So then I was like, so am I being taught something? Because that's the other big spiritual voice in many of our communities is, well, I'm here to learn a lesson, and I hope I learn my lesson, and I really hope it's my last life because, whoa, this curriculum is intense. And
Lessons.
can I quickly learn so that I don't have to do this again? And so I was asking in the depths of this, and I was asking, you know,
What am I?
am I being taught a lesson? And I want you to feel the resonance because words are very limited. I
Mm.
want you to feel the home song underneath this, which is where the real transformational power is. And that is this clear seeing. So this thought arrives with, do you have any idea who you really are? And it was the seeing that what we really, really are is so equal to this that we say yes to it all. That must give you a glimpse of the sovereignty of the soul, that we say yes to being born and to dying and to bleeding and to forgetting, and the courage it takes to be a human being, that we say yes, tells you like who we really are at the deepest level, and that we are equal to. And we are not being taught a lesson, because the tone of that is you're this little tiny little minuscule little pathetic thing hoping to graduate, and life would never, the deepest truth is not that. And then with that, always the paradox is, if you choose to harvest wisdom from a winter, from a tough life experience, that is entirely up to you.
Yes, not mandatory.
Not mandatory.
And that you weren't picked up and plopped down in the middle of this, you know? I've yet to find a good way to say, because if I say, you know, this is, you chose to be here, then that can be misconstrued as, well, you know. Um, but I really like that, and I do from time to time get that message is, do you have any idea who you really are? And I don't
Yeah.
think most of us do. And I think, quite frankly, in terms of controlling people, there goes my voice, it is, for those who wish to be in power, it is unwise for people to remember who they are. It's it's not so easy to round people up like sheep when they're very aware of their sovereignty and of who they are on a soul level.
Sure.
Yet, I really, in the midst of all of our individual transformations and on our individual paths, it certainly seems, and neither one of us is an astrologer, but I'm figuring out who I'm going to have on soon to talk about this, because there are so many things going on in the universe that have not happened since some year before Christ, since 400 years, 200 years, whatever, that all of our little adventures and awakenings seem to be, taking place in the midst of much larger ones. And I find that comforting. Some people do and some people don't. But that we can get very, very focused on our own particular lives, not in a narcissistic way or anything like that, but in just a focus, and let me just navigate this.
Yeah.
Um, and and I think when people become, when they open up their lenses, this is, when I say, talk about opening lenses, this is exactly what I mean, to see the bigger picture of who we truly are, and how our adventures interact with the adventures of others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fair point. We are the custodians of our own lives, so it is, so we are meant to prioritize care for our families, care for ourselves. And there is a, I agree, there's a bigger picture. And I think many of, without turning this into a Hollywood story, because I'm mindful of that, there is, like the body has a response to infection, and the body produces white blood cells, and there's a natural healing response. There is a call for each to play their role in a collective healing, or awakening, whatever we want to call it, without, because these words are loaded, of course.
And
But
inadequate. Both.
they're and inadequate, yeah. And we don't want to. Again, you see, this is the risk of spring, and I know it because I've been there. Got the T-shirt, as I said. As we become more awake, it's very easy to make an identity, to claim a specialness, to take words like these words we're throwing around, sovereignty, and oh yes, 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 yeah,
All
yeah.
of which are overused in
And then
hashtag.
life just smacks us and says, yeah, well,
Good enough,
just in
but
case, you just spend one day in hospital wearing one of those little robes that flaps open in the back, and all your dignity is out the window, and you're like reminded that you are truly equal to everything and
commonality,
everyone. All that
big
specialness just,
equalizer, being in
yeah,
hospital.
the big equalizer, or you have babies, just one of those.
Oh,
nothing
oh,
dignified. So all of that. Look, I'll share something I haven't shared publicly, and I'm cautious because it has. So let's just put it in the context of all of this, and I will just be honest. Probably about how long ago was this? Uh, I have to measure things by the age of my kids. So my eldest now 30 and is 28. So this is a good 25 to 27 years ago. And so really, if you remember 25, 27 years ago, we were on a different planet.
yeah. So this is the
We
year
were
2000.
not, we
That's
had
what.
little spin cycles. We had personal spin cycles, but we didn't feel like we were in a permanent spin cycle washing machine. Someone is shaking the snow globe all the time, doesn't matter what side you're coming from. I was
From everywhere,
meditating
24/7.
I was
Yeah.
meditating and I don't because I don't often have like visuals. I actually trained that out of myself in my 20s so that I could get, and that's a technical point, more direct knowing because I was very visual and visuals were either accurate or symbolic, and then that started confusing
Then
me.
you have to
And
sort through.
and I found a more accurate sort of way of just having this knowing, right? So that's where so I'm sitting meditating, and then there's visual shows up with a clear kind of download, and the part of me that's always skeptical, even of my own experiences, is always ready, and it's good, it's discerning, keeps me humble. I think it keeps me sane, but that's up for debate. And so the seeing was a future, and it was the earth, and it was this dark crust symbolically around the earth.
Mhm.
And the understanding was that every culture, every system, every country would feel a crisis of faith because there's this feeling of being cut off from external saving, this external God, an external separate something. And that none of us would escape the breakdown of all systems and a crisis of faith from weather to education to health to and that this was an opportunity for the species to break that crust open from the inside out, but that the only way would be an inside out job, and that
Mhm.
that would not be easy, and that the other thing that came with that was that the best of what it means to be human and the worst of what it means to be human, it's a little bit Dickensish, the best of times, the worst of times,
Yeah. Yeah.
would all show up. And when this scared me, right? And I was like, I went in with this, I responded with this question, well, how do we save the planet? And
Right.
it was such a clear seeing of there was so much love for Earth, and there
Yes.
was also a planet die. So there's no attachment. So there's both, always and both. Wisdom
Yeah.
sees in these
Always both.
and both, not either or spaces, which is compassion, love. We do our best. We are here for it. And and then it was like, well, how do I keep my family safe? And then clearly your family is not safe. And I panic. And then it's like, shows me the human family to remember not to do us and them dynamics. That this is an opportunity, and it is an opportunity. And who knows, we can speculate about how we're doing or not. But as the years have unfolded, I always remember that seeing and and I am and when I sit in the winter of that, because I think we do feel the collective suffering, and I know that is true.
Yes.
I'm reminded by resting in home song as strength, and
Mhm.
and I'm also reminded that we're all quite busy supporting and holding without knowing, without our conscious minds knowing. There is a role to play, but we don't have to turn it into a grand hero. If each of us is custodian for our own, your own personal growth, your own courage to face winters, your own pause
Mhm.
and build your wisdom well and drink from your well, and your inner work is your contribution.
Right, the tending your own garden, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the you know, it's I grew up going to Lutheran church and this vacation Bible school, and there's a song we sang all the time, and I've seen it on online quite a bit lately, especially with what's going on in the States. And it's, this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it
Yeah.
shine. And that's a nice little soundtrack for, what I've seen similar things over pretty similar timeline. And um, I think that's a really nice place to leave this. You've been extremely generous. I think there's a lot here for people. I imagine people will watch this more than once, to dive into. And I love and fully underline and agree, just tend your own little place. And if each of us do that, I mean, think about it, if each of us did that, how quickly things would change overall
Yeah.
without this efforting of sending out bridges, as you say, and all of that kind of thing. Thank you, Colleen. I very much look forward to more conversations with you here and elsewhere. Please let people know, because I'm sure they will be very curious to find out where can people find you. We'll put the in the show notes as well. But
Yeah, easy. Colleen-Joy.com. My new book is available on Amazon and in South Africa from publisher.co.za, and also links are on my site. So my site can give them a free PDF, to attest to determine the season of your soul with some free resources. So just go to colleen-joy.com, and if anything resonates, then
and you will also be
click the
joining us.
buttons.
Yes, click buttons, click those buttons, and you will also be very kindly following along with us in the print issue. There'll be a 6-month transformation thread,
Yep.
starting with the print issue and finishing up online. So people can also search your name on our site and find all of
Yes.
that to go as well.
And the article I've just written for you will help people with this metaphor of the seasons of the soul as well. So if
Right.
this landed for folks, they can go to Odyssey and read more.
Layers. So that's in our
Later. Yes,
coming
later.
out issue out the 23rd of March. It'll be online about a week before that. Thank you, my friend. I look forward to more. Always.
Bless you. Thank you, Christa.